It's a big story, my relationship with my mother. So I was born at the end of her internship. So she was now a doctor and had this little baby who was me. So she describes this as the most painful experience of her life,
Wow.
the birth of me. And she and I perhaps got somehow bonded through that experience in a perhaps in a painful form of attachment.
Yes.
Where we caused each other pain, we experienced one another's pain and knew one another through the pain, something like that. When I was 8, she had a stroke, and she developed a problem in being able to recognize faces. As a child, I was her memory. So I would walk with her and I would scan the environment for who I knew she knew,
Yes.
and I would point that out to her. So I'd say, there's so-and-so, you know this person, greet them, you know. I don't know how much you know about South African politics, but there was one ruling government party. At every other level of politics, the opposition never won a seat. And so one election, they asked my mother if she would run. And she said she would do it. She could take 6 weeks off from the hospital, run the campaign, knowing she would never win, but on condition that she would never have to make a speech in public. She won the election. So she was the only person of all the candidates across the country that won an election. And so my mother's visibility pulled me out into the spotlight, and I found it very difficult. It was very uncomfortable. The question of who am I next to this highly visible person? And who I was behind the scenes. You know that person, you know this person, you should or shouldn't say this. I was her conscience, her social organizer. I had a role. And also what I saw was this powerful woman. I mean, if you met my mother, she's very powerful. She's very outspoken. She's very courageous in many ways. I mean, she spoke to that powerful apartheid force very free, very openly and courageously. She was banned from going into Soweto. She brought electricity to Soweto. She did amazing things. And she became quite an advocate for gay people, and there was always a little bit of a struggle for me with my mother around how my story became hers, because she would take it and then do something with it, you know, became an advocate or speak out about it. My mother was an oncologist. So I told her, you know, I showed her the lymph node enlargement. She sent me for a biopsy, came back that there was nothing that they could find, but then a few days later the doctor called me, said that he had tested my blood for what is now HIV, and that I was positive. I had to tell my mother.
Wow.
So she and I were the only ones who knew about my being HIV positive. She started this program for parents of people with HIV in South Africa, and that became an NGO that delivers AIDS education to communities.
Wonderful.
So that's again, she took my story and she made it hers, but in a way that I'm very grateful for. She's done wonderful work with it, amazing work with it. I think one of the most difficult parts of my relationship with my mother was always the unspoken connection.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this deep knowing. And my father always used to say it, you know, he always used to say, oh, she has a relationship with you like she has with nobody else. My brothers always say it. To this day,
Yes.
my brothers say to me, my brother will say, how's mom? He said, I spoke to her yesterday. She said she's fine, but how is she really? You know, because she'll tell me. I always was the one who had to hold the not fine, where I was the only person carrying significant pain of hers. So my mother wrote this, and I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, but I'll read you some of it. Paul's 50th birthday. What can I say? I have no words to describe what I feel about the miracle of his achieving this milestone. I realize it was Paul himself who helped me cope. All I wish now is that we will still be around to be able to celebrate many more birthdays of Paul. Selma. It's brilliant.